There have been teams down throughout history that get tagged for being, I don't know, next year's champions or paper champions. I got to think this Texas A&M football program is the most talked about college football team in the nation during the offseason. So we'll see what is coming up here in 2022. Of course, we got Andrew Hattersley on the line. We got Texas A&M football talk with all of you live. And kind of an inside joke between Andrew and I would be that finally I got the SEC, the Texas A&M channel up and fired up and running with the live stream. That's just been a bear to get done, but it's done. Yeah. So we're simulcasting on the main channel, the SEC channel, the Texas A&M channel. So if you love the Aggies, get on over, support our Texas A&M channel. And you know what? If you just love what we do here at the Voice of College Football and you don't like Texas A&M, still go over there, please, and subscribe until we get to 1,000 subscribers. That's kind of the magic mark when it comes to YouTube. All right, Andrew, how you doing today?
Yeah, I bet there's plenty of A&M fans out there, right? There's never a dull off season around Texas A&M, and this has certainly been the case again. Expectations and trying to break through and make that college football playoff, recruiting and everything else that went on last month with Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. There hasn't been a dull month at all. We're already into June and the season's right around the corner.
Why don't we start with that? Because what we've got Andrew on here for, first and foremost, is his expertise is he's going to these camps. He's following recruiting like few others. He's all over it. We will get to that in just a second. But of course, the big talk of the offseason, in addition to transfer portal and NIL and expansion and all that business, is obviously this little spat between Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher prior to the SEC coaches meetings in Destin. And then there was an article that came out. I saw it on CBS Sports. It's probably carried in a number of other platforms where Texas A&M had apparently urged the SEC to punish, penalize, discipline Nick Saban, whatever term, Andrew, you want to put on that.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to, what ended up happening was Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher both got reprimands for their respective sound bites, and that happened. And obviously Jimbo Fisher had the press conference, but I think it speaks to just the anger that was around that building that Thursday morning when they kind of learned of the comments, and Mark Robinson, who's in the athletic department, kind of called Jimbo Fisher and let him know, because Jimbo Fisher, as we talked about last time, isn't on Twitter, and so obviously he's not really going to see the Twitter comments, but got a call about it. And there was just a lot of anger that about what Nick Saban said, obviously, and singling out Texas A&M, but went to the SEC meetings, and I know there were plenty of people ready to talk about that at the SEC meetings, and both Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher were a lot more toned down at the SEC meetings, and kind of both along the same things, that we need to find consistency in NIL and need to look for solutions. And so I think they're both trying to kind of move on. They got their reprimands from Greg Sankey, and both kind of talked about heading towards the future and focusing on finding solutions rather than kind of continuing to engage in that war of words that both have had. But Jimbo Fisher said he certainly had, kind of said his bit and was ready to move on.
Reminding everyone once again, we are live talking Texas A&M football. So we have Andrew on all the time talking Texas A&M football. He handled our post game of the Aggies last season, and we've got Andrew on here all the time. We did a spot a couple weeks ago where Andrew came on the Miami Live show, but I thought it would be good to talk some Texas A&M football with Andrew live with all of you and take your comments and questions. So please leave them in the live stream. And Nick, we don't want to spend too much time on this one.
We had a fun, lively debate about that, right?
I'm sorry, what's that?
We had a fun, lively debate about that.
Oh, yeah. It was a good time. Absolutely. Nick, I appreciate what you're letting us know right there. We won't get into YouTube technicalities and so forth, but we hope that everybody's able to access that. So, Nick, if you can hit me up at markriderstv at Gmail, I would love to know what maybe some issues are with the search to get some of these streams and the notifications. So we want to make this as easy as possible for everyone to, of course, access. Yes, there's Mr. HD. He's a Miami fan. See you September 17th at the College Station. So everybody go back a couple weeks in the Miami channel and you'll find when Andrew was on. It was a good time having Andrew on the Miami stream.
Yeah.
Let's get to recruiting.
It's been a
When people
busy.
think recruiting these days, Texas A&M immediately comes to mind because of all the success. What have you been working on?
Yeah, so it's June's kind of a busy month for recruiting because there's a dead period coming up at the end of this month. June 26th, take a break for about a month until July 24th, and then there's kind of a random week where again it's kind of a an evaluate or a contact period where players can take visits down to campuses again, and then it's a dead period again until the beginning of the season. So it's kind of a last busy stretch here for these couple of weeks, and then a lot of schools around the country are hosting college camps. Texas A&M's no different, kind of following a similar structure to what they've had in past years, where they go Wednesday to Friday, back to back weeks. One session on Wednesday, two on Thursday, one on Friday, and then host a bunch of kids. Already been some impressive performances from some young kids. From Tory Blaylock is a name that a lot of fans will probably know. Son of an former NFL player. Was kind of the talk of Friday. 2025 running back out of Atascocita, had a phenomenal day, just coming out of the backfield and gave defenders all sorts of problems. Takias Brinkley's another intriguing guy. I think he started out at linebacker and they moved him to edge for the second portion of camp, and he looked great. Being able to put his hand in the dirt a little bit. One kind of comparison that was made was if he couldn't be maybe a Tyree Johnson for A&M fans that remember him. Was pretty good these past couple of years, and so that was kind of the comparison that was made was if he could be could kind of turn into a little bit of Tyree Johnson as a speed guy off the edge. Probably wasn't as many. There was a couple offers each of the 3 days, and so last year, like 5-star after 5-star seemed to show up. The new noteworthy news of the day on Friday as well: Hakeem Williams, a big target for A&M, a national top 50 wide receiver, showed up on Friday for an unofficial visit. Went through a little bit of a workout, and then stayed the weekend. So he was down for the spring game as well. So that's a big one for A&M, and yeah, it was certainly a busy one. And then this weekend they rolled right into camps or right into official visit season. Harris Sewell's a big target that was in town. Jaden Chapman, just touched base with him, and we'll have a story coming on the board later today over on Gig'em 24/7 that really enjoyed his trip. Got to spend some time with Steve Adazio and spent some time with Demetrius Crownover, who's an interesting one. Moved over to offensive line from tight end. He hosted Jaden Chapman for the weekend, and it sounds like things went really well there. And Andy Jean's another guy that they had in town that had a really good weekend, a really good time, and return trip for him as well. And so A&M and Georgia are very much in the mix as well there.
Talking up Texas A&M football right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Andrew Hattersley on here. You can catch his work at Gig'em 247 Sports. So it's Gig'em247.com. The baseball team's doing some work too.
It's one of the more remarkable stories. Last year, A&M didn't not only saw their postseason streak come to an end, but didn't even make the SEC tournament. Go out and hire Jim Schlossnagle, and what a job he's done. I think it's probably one of the best coaching jobs in America that he's done with this team to not only get them back to the postseason, but they're one of only a couple teams that hasn't lost a game yet in the regionals and super regionals. 5-0 so far. Moved on to Omaha in the College World Series with a pair of victories over Louisville. And Louisville, should I say, as my coworker was giving me business on the other one about pronunciation of that. I just blame it on being South African. I just say my pronunciation is different. And so, it's been a fun time around A&M. To the question of, wonder if baseball has an effect on the football side. I think how could it not, right? Like when you talk to kids, especially having recruiting weekends like they've had the past 2 weekends. Some kids aren't baseball fans, but others that are have had a chance to kind of stand up on the on the recreational center, on the recreation center, and overlook the stadium. And one of the things that was said to me was just the fans are nuts. Any chance you get an opportunity to showcase what your fans can do and what sort of environment you can play in, um, I think can only help recruiting. It can only help the brand of A&M, show the success that you can have as a program. And so from that angle, I think being able to host games and be able to at least show kids that there's a buzz going around campus and a buzz about the team. But just an incredible job. And the other thing I think that's noteworthy, they really haven't even gotten any good starting pitching the past couple of days, and and really since the second half of the season, and to have won several series in a row, be able to beat Louisville without really a starter going more than 5 innings, just what their bullpen has done is just incredible. And the timely hitting, I think they were hitting over 500 at one point in the postseason with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. It's just it's just kind of wild.
All right. We've got fan bases from all over the place coming in here: Oregon,
Yeah.
Florida, Alabama, and others. Miami, of course, West Virginia. And so you never know what we're going to get here with all sorts of fan bases being represented. Want to remind everyone we've got a Texas A&M channel, so check out most of my work with Andrew over there, as Andrew pops on here every week or two to talk Texas A&M football. But please subscribe to our Texas A&M channel, and if you love what we do here at the Voice of College Football, subscribe. Even if you don't like the Aggies, to help us to get to 1,000 subscribers, that helps the deal. And then you can unsubscribe after that. All right. Andrew, you've got some picks out there, and we don't want to unveil the picks here. We want to direct everybody over to Gig'em247 to get your picks. We don't want
Yeah.
to rob you of your views over there, but just give us a bit of a feel, because the over-under is at 8.5, and what you were looking at. Obviously the schedule, but also the personnel additions and subtractions.
So Brian and I kind of, for those who I'm sure know, Brian Peroni has also works with me on the 24/7 Sports site. We recorded a short little video. I don't know if it's out yet or it's coming out, but just kind of giving our season predictions. And he had it at 11-1, and I had it 10-2. And I think the pieces are in place to really win there. I think A&M feels fine with either Max Johnson or Haynes King at quarterback. I really do. I mean, the spring game performance obviously doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but fans have to remember that Max Johnson had a pretty good year last year. I know it wasn't perfect. I know he takes his deliveries a little longer, but he was pretty. He protected the ball for the most part. And I think if you put a strong running game around him, you can certainly win with him. And I think there's tools that Haynes King, he's got to get stronger, obviously, and become more durable. And get injuries were a concern, obviously, with the hit he took against Colorado. But I think he's a guy that you can certainly win with as well and get out on the perimeter. And he's got great speed. He can really make plays with his legs. He's got to just learn how to protect the ball more. But I think the other thing about it is you still have Devon Achane coming back, who I think has a chance to be one of the better running backs in the country this year. And, they've stacked good recruiting class on top of good recruiting class on top of good recruiting class. And they did lose some players from last year, the DeMarvin Leals and Aaron Hansfords, but have still got a lot of returning pieces on that side of the ball. There's a lot of optimism about McKinley Jackson. He played hurt quite a bit of last year, so I think they're hoping a healthy McKinley Jackson can kind of anchor the middle of the defense. Antonio Johnson's a guy that's now starting to show up on mock drafts and can move all over the secondary. Damani Richardson's back. And they've got a lot of talented pieces to turn to on the defensive line. I think the key for Texas A&M this year versus last year is returning several starters along the offensive line. You got Layden Robinson back. You got Bryce Foster back. You got Reuben Father. You aren't having to almost put together an entire new offensive line. I think left tackle is going to be in a better spot, probably with Trey Zoom there. I think he'll be an upgrade over Jameer Johnson, and then you've just got to kind of figure out that guard spot. And I think it's a challenge. Obviously, Kenyon Green's a big piece to replace. Um, I do think with Evan Stewart in the mix at wide receiver, they can be more explosive in the passing game. And Chris Marshall is another guy that I think can certainly be a weapon on the outside and be dangerous there. And so, the pieces have to fall into place. A&M's got a really tough October. That's kind of where I looked at as maybe if they're going to slip up. Obviously, the trip to Alabama on October 8th. Well, we talked about this on the Miami stream about they've got to go face Arkansas September 24th, then go to Mississippi State, then Alabama, then South Carolina, and home for Ole Miss. That's a pretty tough stretch of games.
Yeah, when you think about it, it was Ole Miss and Arkansas, of course, that tagged Texas A&M with losses there in October last year.
Mm-hmm.
The Mississippi State game came down to what? The last kick of the game, right? Right at the
The
wire.
Mississippi State one, they had a couple turnovers late in the fourth quarter against Mississippi State and Arkansas. The Mississippi State one, they couldn't get a stop on defense. Ole Miss and Arkansas, they had turnovers in the fourth quarter, and LSU, they weren't able to close it out. Late, obviously, gave up the late drive to Max Johnson, actually, who had to throw down the sideline late in the game to score the winning touchdown. But a lot of close games, A&M just didn't finish, and turnovers hurt them. Slow starts at times hurt them. Inconsistency offensively and defensively, and so those were really I think the problems. But they were probably a couple plays here and there from 9-3, 10-2.
Folks, check out our Texas A&M channel. Once again, if you love the Aggies, obviously subscribe right there. You get a lot of insight from Andrew in particular over on our Texas A&M channel here at the Voice of College Football. And in addition to that, if you're just supporting what we do in our network of channels, please subscribe. We'd love to get all of them to 1,000. That's a deal where YouTube starts to take you seriously at 1,000 subscribers, starts to put the videos in traffic and so forth. Good question by Joey Foster here, our guy Joey, who's asking about the effect of, this has been the busiest offseason I've ever seen in college football, and this is pretty much what it's going to be going forward for the most part. But that was the one incident that was specific. Everything else is a broad topic, playoff, NIL. This was the one thing that, although it dealt with NIL, were two name brand coaches in this spat back and forth. And can you really tell whether anything's been said by recruits or anything out there where there was any kind of impact?
It's interesting because I went to a spring game, and we're also conscious. We don't want to put kids on the record about give us your side, give us your take between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. That's not fair to them. They're still high school kids, and it's a tough spot to put them in. But a lot of kids actually just approached it with a sense of humor. Kind of laughed about it, said it was kind of wild what they had seen from both sides. And maybe laugh it off a little bit. The one thing the feedback I did get on the Jimbo Fisher on the Jimbo Fisher side was the fact that he would stick up for players. From a player's perspective, there were a lot of kids that said, him being able to go out and being able to go out there and put out that statement to defend players was something I know a lot of recruits kind of liked and had respect for. Now they didn't necessarily want to opine on the whole situation, but that was just one piece of feedback that they said that, they kind of appreciated that side of it, that he would have their back because he's got the reputation as being a player's coach. He'll coach you hard on the field, but is known as a guy that players really connect with off the field. And so I think a lot of kids like that and just kind of laughed it off on both sides and tried not to get in the middle of it. just kind of said that, Miles McVay was one that kind of joked, is this the side of you that are you what the media says you are, or are you? And Jimbo Fisher said, "Well, you got to come see me in person." And he said, "Well, you're not like the media portrays you to be. You're a lot nicer than the media portrays you to be." So he kind of joked with him. All the kids have been having fun with it and kind of joking with them back and forth and having some fun with it. But yeah, no, for the most part, I don't think any kids have taken it too seriously. He doesn't really have a swing in there. I do think it is going to be interesting though when kids do start going on back-to-back official visits to A&M and Ole Miss and Alabama, how coaches kind of lobby behind the scenes on those sorts of things. But for the most part, it hasn't had too much of an effect. Kind of some off-season drama.
Web
Um,
Security is asking whether you have any type of lean or take on the speculation that the SEC, of course, and Greg Sankey's been very upfront about it, that they worked through a ton of models at the coaches' meetings in Destin, Florida, in regards to possible internal type playoffs and how to deal with that, because the commissioner very upfront about not being too happy about the playoff proposal being um, rejected by the other conferences. Do you have any thoughts about where this is headed?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll end up happening in the future. I think it was an interesting idea that was proposed around, but I think ultimately when if they can get to the table, and I did see, our Brandon Marcello over at 24/7 talked about this time next year wanting to have a playoff proposal in place to kind of expand or stay where they are or do whatever they're going to do. And but I think ultimately, I think the A&M, I think the SEC will kind of um, fall in line with that playoff system as long as it ends up getting expanded. I don't. I think it was kind of a proposal that was thrown out there. I don't think they were happy with the way things kind of fell apart at the end. And Nick and Greg Sankey had obviously spent a lot of time putting together that playoff proposal, and I think probably expected it to go through. And so for it to kind of fall apart at the end, I think there was certainly some frustration on his end. But I think in the long run, I think they end up kind of falling in line with the playoff proposals and scheduling accordingly. And as they put together their schedule this fall and look ahead to Texas and Oklahoma joining, um, I think it was an idea that was thrown out there, but I don't know how seriously I would take it quite yet.
Andrew, Jimbo Fisher signed a 10-year contract, correct?
Last off season, yeah, fully guaranteed.
Oh, so they extended him last off season. So
Correct.
wasn't the
Yeah,
original deal 10 years?
correct. And then they
So he's
extended it
already
back up
5
to
years
10
into it,
years.
and
Yeah,
now we're back to 10 years out.
correct. Yeah. So now
Okay.
9. So truthfully, I mean, for questions like this, I know David Oni asks how long will A&M keep paying Fisher for mediocre results. He's locked in for the foreseeable future at this point. And so, I think A&M's certainly put their faith in him and their trust that, um, he's going to build off this number one. Obviously, is the pressure going to continue to mount if they don't do something over the next 4 years? Yeah, probably. But I think they really feel like this is the if I think there'd be a lot more pressure if recruiting was falling off or they were struggling on the recruiting trail. And but there's a lot of buzz about Texas A&M right now and where they're kind of going. And what could happen in the next couple of years coming off this number one recruiting class and getting several other big guys on campus. I think for the most part they like the structure that's in place right now. Ross Bjork is happy with where things are going. Obviously, they want to see the results on the field. There's no question about that, and they're paying to compete for championships. And so, I think there's kind of an expectation over the next 4 to 5 years with the recruiting that's gone on the last couple of years that's going to be the case. But I think right now they're pretty happy with where they've been. I think they felt like they should have been in the playoff 2 years ago. So that's something that A&M, administration will bring up. But right now, with the way the recruiting's going, I don't think there's a lot of concern about the future and where A&M is heading.
So, Andrew, it was a ridiculous class, of course, in 2022, 29 enrollees. And no particular recruit nor recruiting class should be judged after one season. That's obviously they're freshmen. They're going to have the least amount of impact as freshmen, but still, this group is so talented.
Yeah.
If there's one guy, and there should be several guys that are going to have an impact. Now, let's not put the bar or the standard too high as freshmen that they're going to go off crazy and be all Americans or anything like that. But if there was one guy that you would be the most confident is going to have the biggest impact out of all these, what, 9 5 stars? Well,
Yeah.
who would be the guy that you think has the opportunity to make the biggest splash?
This year, I think it would be Evan Stewart. I think he is so immensely talented, um, and his athleticism is just off the charts. That I think, pretty much from when he got on campus, he's been in the starting lineup at wide receiver, and so it didn't take long for him to get in there. Um, I think his just explosiveness and athleticism, what he could do, he's a good route runner. Um, is always working out. I think I maybe I get to see that more because I see him in the Dallas area quite a bit, but the guy is always training, always working out, and so I don't think you really have to coach up work ethic with him. I don't think you have to coach up some of the things that maybe as a freshman you might have to, kind of deal with learning the playbook and those sorts of things. This guy is 100% bought in, and so if there was a guy that I think has a chance to compete very early on, I think it's probably Evan Stewart. Down the road, I think Connor Wigman's going to have a huge impact. Whether it's this year, obviously it's Haynes King and Max Johnson, but a year or two from now, I think that's the guy that A&M really looks at that can take the cornerback position to another level. He was a tremendous high school football player. Um, and then you've got other guys. I mean, along the defensive line, I think they're going to find a way to play Walter Nolan early and Shamar Stewart and Anthony Lucas, some of those guys that have been on campus early on. But Evan Stewart's probably the guy. I think he's just an elite athlete and is just going to be able to provide something to that wide receiver room that they just frankly haven't had. And I think he showed a little bit of that in the spring game, and um, I think has a chance to basically be the top option for A&M this year at receiver, along with Anaya Smith. And so, it's rare for a freshman to do that, but I think he's got that sort of talent and ceiling.
Yeah, so it has to do with the talent, of course, but also the need at the position. Talking about wide receiver, is
Mhm.
that the position either side of the ball that you think has the most question marks and has maybe been the most disappointing the last couple seasons?
Yeah, probably that. Linebacker is probably a bit of a concern. I think depth-wise, would be the other one I would say. I think the numbers there are a bit low. They need everything to go well at linebacker this year. They need to avoid injuries. A guy like Harold Perkins that they missed out on that went to LSU, that was a huge blow. That was a huge, huge, huge blow. But I think receiver has probably been the biggest question just because they haven't had a guy that can take a top off of defense. They haven't, Damon Demas was supposed to be that guy that would kind of elevate the receiver room. He never got it together, and so I think they're really hoping that, and I think they're really excited about all three of these guys that they signed this class. Chris Marshall's a guy who's still learning the wide receiver position, but has all the talent in the world. Noah Thomas is another guy they're really excited about, but I think they look at a guy like Evan Stewart and think this is not a guy that we've had on campus yet in 4 years under Jimbo Fisher, and that's no disrespect to the guys already on campus, but Evan Stewart's just kind of in that elite group of receivers, and what he's going to be able to do. I think expectations are sky high, and I do think they want to see more out of that position.
Talking of Texas A&M football here at the Voice of College Football, we got Andrew Hattersley on the line as we typically do. You can catch his work at Gig'em 247. We know he's got a season prediction out there for the Aggies. The over-unders at 8.5, and tons of notes from. You just had camps over the weekend. More camps, more official
week,
visits, unofficial visits.
Then they've got a big target making a decision on Saturday. Jaden Rashada which is, there's probably a lot of fans as I'm kind of looking through the comment section here that would care about him. He's kind of wrapped up a busy stretch the past couple of days. He went to last week. I mean, the guy has got to be exhausted. He's got a decision date coming up on Saturday, June 18th. Went last weekend from June 3rd to June 5th. He was at Texas A&M. Then he went to LSU from June 5th to June 7th. Then from June 7th to June 9th, went from LSU to Florida for an official visit, and then turned around and was at the OTR 7-on-7 showcase out in Las Vegas over the weekend. And so now he's probably these couple of days he's kind of settling in to kind of look back and make his decision. A&M and Florida are two very schools very much in the mix there. It's kind of a weird recruitment because both of those schools came into the mix a bit later for him. Florida with the new coaching staff, A&M obviously after they lost the commitment from Eli Holstein to Alabama, and Miami and Oregon have been two schools, and Ole Miss are a couple schools that were in the mix there before. Ole Miss has a commitment from Marcel Reed, so they've kind of fallen down a little bit, but A&M in Florida and LSU's kind of jockeying it out for Dante Moore as well. And so it's going to be a fascinating couple of weeks with the quarterback dominoes and where things kind of go from here.
Andrew, for somebody who's never been to Kyle Field, especially at night, I've been to A&M once, but that was for a baseball regional. So I got just a sliver. The place was packed, but it was a baseball stadium, so whatever that seats, with the train in the background, and the site was beautiful, and it was a great scene for college baseball. But to transfer that to football, so I've never seen it in person. For anybody that hasn't, can you give us some kind of there's always a debate over which venue, whether it's Happy Valley or Death Valley or A&M or best venues, and who can really bring it. If you can give us kind of a flavor of what it's like at A&M when it's really rocking.
Yeah, so I think, well, for one, they don't sit down the entire game. That place is rocking, and there's 107,000 in there regardless of who's playing. I mean, they'll get 100,000 in there regardless of opponent, regardless of Power Five. They really fill that place up. They live for Saturdays, and frankly, it starts Friday night as well. Before, I know one of the things that uh, they kind of did recruiting wise last year was bring kids in for midnight yell, where fans are loading in for midnight yell at 12 o'clock to practice, cheers for the next day, and have 30 minutes. I mean, I don't have another fan base that is there at midnight doing midnight yell practice the night before a home game. I mean, that's just the passion and excitement around that program. And so it's one of those things that they just are into the game the entire time. Like there is no having to get A&M fans into a game. They are into it. They are ready to make noise. You got the cannon going and all that. It's just a pretty incredible atmosphere when you think about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else with questions or comments there in the chat? We got Andrew for a couple more minutes. If there's anything else out there, I always love getting player profiles. So I'm going to throw one more at you here.
Yeah.
We'll grab the 23 class, and you went over these guys, but since there's only 5 hard commits, I'm going to read them all off. You grab whoever you want to talk about, highlight, whether that's 1, 2, 5, whatever. So you got the cornerback, Bravion Rogers, number 7 at his position. You got Javon Thomas, the other corner, ranked right behind him. Johnny Bowens, defensive lineman, 35th rated at his position out of Texas. And 2 more Texas guys, and Colton Thomason, offensive tackle, and Tyler White, the punter.
Yeah, so I'll roll through all of them. Beginning with Colton Thomason, I think he's got a tremendous story. A guy that's really reshaped his body and worked incredibly hard. He's been committed to A&M now for close to a year. He took his official visit this weekend. And I think kind of an important development actually with when it comes to him, he's he's picking up playing tackle now. He's obviously got the tackle body at 6'8", 325 pounds, kind of your prototypical offensive tackle. And if there's one trend that's kind of emerged in high school football and in college recruiting, it's getting harder and harder to find offensive tackle bodies, those 6'7", 6'6", 6'8" guys. Like it's just getting harder to find them. And so for A&M to have a guy on board that they can develop and work with is big because they really need offensive tackles. They've got a ton of interior guys, but I think a true tackle or a guy with that length and size that they're able to work with is a huge development. He's a he's about as locked in as it gets. Is really doing all he can to help recruit for A&M, and so and just a really good kid too. And then Johnny Bowens, he announced his commitment on Christmas. Really athletic defensive lineman can kind of play inside and out. Kind of the same sort of the kind of the prototypical defensive lineman that A&M is looking for that they can kind of maneuver around and um, really really good player. Probably a little underrated out of Converse Judson, which produced DeMarvin Leal. I think A&M would love to have anything close to DeMarvin Leal production out of him. So just a really good player. And then Javon Thomas is a guy that was not able to play for the first part of his junior year, but came back shortly before the playoffs. And super dynamic cornerback that can play. That they've mentioned being able to return punts, return kicks. He played some running back as well in high school. Bravion Rogers is a little bit the same way as well. And a guy they've actually discussed a little bit of maybe playing a little bit of wide receiver. We'll see how that goes. Right now, he's being recruited as a cornerback, and I think that's where he wants to play. Number 7 cornerback in the country, and so they kind of got their secondary class kicked off in April with those two guys on April 12th and 13th. Back-to-back days, kind of got a great start to the secondary class, and then Tyler White is a baseball player as well, pitcher, and a really good punter out of one of the top punters out of South Lake Carroll, which is a big school here in Texas. And so, kind of a good start to the class. They're looking to build more over the next month or so, and this month will be huge when it comes to kind of putting the class together. And one of the big question marks is just what they're going to do at offensive line, at receivers, another big question. And so I think you'll see that group continue to grow.
Our guy Tim's got a question here concerning former offensive line coach Josh Henson, who was at A&M in 2019, 20, and 21, now has moved on to USC. Tim's a big USC fan, would like to know just your impressions of Henson's work at A&M.
Yeah, so I think he kind of had a bit of an up and down go at Texas A&M. His first year there wasn't great. The offensive line kind of struggled. He really put together his best group was kind of his veteran group that he had with the four seniors. He's a really technical coach. He's big on the technique side. Recruits pretty well. I think one of the big pieces of feedback that a lot of recruits kind of bring up with me about him is he's huge on relationships. Players absolutely love playing for him. I know he has head coaching aspirations in the future, so that was a big reason, a job like USC was appealing to him, that, you can get the offensive coordinator title and kind of take another step towards potentially being a head coach. And so, I think his biggest strength is just the way he builds relationships with players. His guys in the run game are pretty good at zone schemes and things like that. And so, weakness probably at times the offensive line wasn't quite physical enough. I think that was kind of the concern with him. At times they probably could have played a little more physical and kind of won the line of scrimmage a little more. But they were able to open up holes and be effective in the run game. And he's a really good recruiter and relationship builder. I mean, guys like Bryce Foster and Ruben Fothery, some of the foundational pieces of the offensive line for A&M right now came courtesy of him. And so I think USC fans will enjoy having him. I think he was a good pickup for them, and will do a good job out there. He's extremely experienced.
All right, folks, it's been a good time as always. This is our guy, Andrew Hattersley. He takes time out of his day here about every week. I track him down. I bother him to come on here and talk.
It was a fun time.
There
were some really good questions in there.
Absolutely. We usually record it, folks, but we knew it'd be fun to go live and bring Andrew on here to talk some Texas A&M football. Andrew, I know you got a ton going on, so I always appreciate you coming on here doing this for us, and hopefully we can get together soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew. Everybody out there, we got our next live stream coming up here at 6 Eastern, so in just about 3 hours, and it's going to be a different deal. So here's the deal, Andrew. Everybody's always telling me you need to get on this person and this person and this person and this person. So you know what we're going to do? Because some of those are, there's a lot of good guys like you out there that I just hit them up on Twitter, and probably 98% of the time people are nice enough to say, yeah, I have no idea who you are, but yeah, you seem like a good guy and have a decent show. I'll jump on there. But some guys, maybe when you throw out
selling you short.
You throw people out there like Klatt and Herb Street, they're difficult gets. So I said, hey, you guys are talking to our viewers. I said, you guys are always throwing out all these people that I should bring on. This is what we're going to do. Going to have a little workshop together, and we're going to do a live stream, and I'm going to take this list of all these people that I'm always asked to bring on, and I'm going to tweet them, and all you guys need to jump on, because they're going to respond to you. They're not going to respond to me. They're going to respond to, oh, I got 52 likes or 52 retweets or whatever, that people really want me to go on this guy's show. So that's what we're going to do. A little workshop, a little different type of live stream tonight at 6 Eastern.
Man, people just got to mash that subscribe button, mash that like button, as I like to say, and get their attention.
That's it. That's what you got to do. So, Andrew, it's always a good time. I appreciate it. Stay cool at these camps. That's not always easy.
Yeah, it's over 100 degrees, and it'll be another hot one. You know what I like to do is they have the offensive linemen and running backs working inside towards the end of the camp. So I like to just kind of save the linemen and the running backs for the end of the camp, where I can get inside the indoor facility and kind of cool down a little bit. And still watch those guys.
You got to do anything you can. Find a tree somewhere to stand under for just a couple seconds. You do anything you can under those kind of circumstances.
Send my tweet, right? Send my tweet from inside the indoor facility, and then I can take a couple minutes.
I'm not getting good reception out here. I need to step inside, maybe.
Go inside. No doubt. That's basically what I do. You got me. That's basically how I do it.
All right, Andrew. We appreciate you. And awesome. You have a great rest of your week, man.
Thanks, you too, Mark. Take it easy.
We'll see everybody back here at 6 Eastern.